Welcome to Daily Insider here on Vegas Insider. I am Kevin Rogers. Today's Thursday, February 10th, 2022. So we're now 3 days away from Super Bowl 56 between the Bengals and the Rams at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. It's a Thursday. It's football season. So Vince Akins will join us, give us his top trends. He joins us every Thursday during football, goes over all the trends throughout the NFL. Now we're down to two teams. So he's going to give us the best trends for the Bengals and the Rams coming up on Sunday. Also, we'll talk NBA as well in just a little bit. Still waiting to see where the big trades will come from. Today's a trade deadline. Will James Harden get dealt from the Nets? Will he go to Philadelphia for Ben Simmons? We'll see. But already a few trades coming out. Nothing major, but we'll see if Harden, he's kind of the last piece, if he'll get traded before the deadline coming up today. I want to tell you about BetMGM. They are the king of sports books. They're legal in Louisiana, and BetMGM is offering a welcome bonus for casino and sportsbook new users. Enter the bonus code VIBonus for a $25 no deposit free casino game, plus a 100% deposit match up to $1,000. Enter VIBonus in the BetMGM Sportsbook app to receive a $1,000 risk-free bet for your first wager. Again, they are now legal in Louisiana, also legal in New York. So check them out now at betmgm.com. They are the king of sports books. All right, let's bring him on. We love talking to Vince Akins because he provides the trends for us. Vince, you were off last week because you were in the lab getting all the trends ready for Rams and Bengals. And I guess I'll ask you this. I forgot if you told me this or not, but are you more of a Browns fan? You live in Ohio. You lean more towards the Browns than the Bengals?
Yeah, definitely. It's Browns country here up by Cleveland.
Are you rooting for the Bengals to see Ohio do well, or you hate them so much you want to see them lose?
You know, it's funny as a fan. You know, I thought going into the AFC Championship game, I was like, I don't really care. The Bengals. It's not like the Steelers or the Ravens around here. You know, I would never, as a fan, never root for those two teams. Obviously, in the AFC Championship game, I had the Bengals plus 7.5 there, so there was some wiggle room. I actually found myself rooting against the Bengals a little more than I expected. Though for Browns fans here, we have Odell Beckham on the other side of the equation here, so there's a little bit of lose-lose situation.
Yeah, you got problems here. You can't root for anybody because you're rooting for Beckham. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, well, maybe Baker was wrong, and then you root for the Bengals. You're like, come on, you're going against the team, going against the rival. So that's pretty interesting. All right, so Super Bowl 56, and obviously you have a lot of trends that are not team-specific. There are team-specific ones, but there's also a lot of other ones. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you have for the Sunday.
Yeah. So, so we have some playoff-specific things that we look at, and we actually have some Super Bowl-specific ones as well. And I'm going to cite a lot of these in our talk here. These all go back to 2002 for the Super Bowl specifically. So we're looking at the last 20 Super Bowls here when we look at some of these Super Bowl specific trends. Starting with something I found interesting. We're going to look at last year and then look at this year. The Bengals coming from a 4-win season in 2020 to the Super Bowl here. That's pretty rare. There's actually, I'm looking back at that last 20 years, there's been 5 teams that won less than 8 games the past season and then went on to the Super Bowl the next year. And this hasn't happened in 9 or 10 years now. Those teams are 4-1 against the spread in the Super Bowl. So they won less than 8 games last year. So, you're talking about the regs, the riches story, which the Bengals obviously are after they're right there with the 49ers team of the past is having won just 4 games last year. It's pretty solid against the spread performances and teams that don't necessarily have that long-term pedigree. That includes the Bengals. Then just looking at this year, the Bengals had just 10-7, and not a super impressive record for a Super Bowl team either in the regular season. So teams that won no more than 10 games in the regular season the current year, they are 5-0 against the spread in the Super Bowl and have won 4 of those 5 games outright. The last of those, again, almost a decade ago, was the 2012 Ravens, who, the Joe Flacco hot playoff run. The Bengals kind of catching fire in similar fashion here, though, just, 10-7, obviously the extra game this season, but not all that impressive of a regular season record, but still made the Super Bowl. Those teams actually tend to fare quite well. And that leads us into a pretty big Super Bowl trend because you get this one almost every season. So the team that has less regular season wins in the Super Bowl, obviously a couple of those years, the teams were even, had the same amount of wins in the regular season. But so look at the last 20 years. The team with less regular season wins is 15-2 against the spread in the Super Bowl. Actually, 12-5 overall as well. So winning more than 2/3 of those games straight up. Really impressive against the spread performance. That's the team that has less wins. The Bengals, as we just said, 10-7 on the year. The Rams went 12-5 in the regular season, so they have the 2-game edge. So this one favors the Bengals coming in as the team with less wins into the Super Bowl. So now, I want to look at the conference championships, and there's some interesting data here as well. Obviously, these teams both won tight games. The Bengals is big underdogs. The Rams is a small to medium favorite in their NFC Championship game. Actually, before I get to that, one note about the Rams game. This is just a small Super Bowl trend here. The Rams out 20-17 winners in the NFC Championship games. Teams that won their conference championship game while scoring less than 21 points are 3-0 against the spread in the Super Bowl. So this one goes the other way a little bit compared to the first few we looked at, and really the next few as well. The Rams had 20-17 win, lower scoring in the conference championship game. Those teams that won with defense, real specifically scoring 20 points or less in the championship game, have done well in the Super Bowl. But some really noteworthy things here as far as the Super Bowl and that performance against the spread the week before. So we mentioned the Bengals, 7.5 point favorite or underdogs last week, depending exactly when you capture that line. So this is a real nice Super Bowl stat: 11-0 against the spread. That's teams in the Super Bowl coming off an upset win in the conference championship game when their opponent was not off a upset win. Obviously, that cancels out in a couple situations where both teams are off upset wins. But when it's just one team, obviously the Rams were favored last week. The Bengals were underdogs. Teams coming off that upset win going into the Super Bowl, 11-0 against the spread in the Super Bowl. These teams are actually 9-2 straight up as well, even though 10 of the 11 were underdogs in the Super Bowl, just as the Bengals find themselves here. So only one of those teams went from upset win to being favored the next week. The other 10 of the 11 were all underdogs. That includes some pretty big ones. Even last year's Tampa Bay team found themselves in the exact same spot, coming off the upset win in Green Bay in the FC Championship game, and then were underdogs in the Super Bowl as well, obviously handling the Chiefs quite easily last year. So obviously just not just an upset win last week, but a pretty big upset win, 7.5 point spread. So all three teams coming off wins at least a touchdown underdog, 7 points or more in the conference championship game, won and covered the next week. And that includes a couple of really big upsets. We look back at the 2001 Patriots as 14-point dogs. The 2007 Giants were almost 12.5 point dogs in the Super Bowl. The 2012 Ravens, which I mentioned, those are the three teams that had won by at least a touchdown dog in the conference championship game, all gone to the Super Bowl, and all three were upset winners in the Super Bowl as well, including a couple of really big upsets. So finally, the last thing we're going to talk about against the spread in this game. So I want to look at the converse of that. So the Rams were a Super Bowl team that failed to cover in the NFC Championship game. They were 3.5 point favorites last week against the 49ers. Narrowly failed to cover. So that doesn't happen too often. But teams in the Super Bowl that failed to cover in the conference championship game, just 1-5 against the spread and 1-5 overall in the Super Bowl as well. Most recently, that was the 2017 Patriots found themselves in that situation when they lost to the Eagles as pretty comfortable favorites in the Super Bowl.
I got one for you, Vince. This is so funny that I don't know if you have the teams in front of you, but the one trend you put out, it was the teams with the less regular season wins, 15-2 ATS, 12-5 overall in the Super Bowl. You know who one of those losses was from? It was from the Atlanta Falcons losing to New England in that game where they had the huge lead in overtime, and they fell. So think about that. Even though I do lean Rams in this game, that's a pretty strong trend, though, that teams with less regular season wins, because I believe the Buccaneers had less wins than the Chiefs last year. Obviously, the Bucs were on the road the whole time, but that's pretty impressive, though. Teams with less regular season wins, 15-2 against the spread in the Super Bowl. One of those losses was Atlanta.
Yeah, it actually pulled up that data. So the other one was the 2002 Raiders. So we're going back way. So you're actually looking at it's 14-1 against the spread the last 15 times have been active. And even the Falcons in that game, I mean, they covered the spread in regulation, considering they were talking. Despite being up 25 points in that game, they would have covered the spread if not for overtime. And even if the Patriots hadn't scored that touchdown in overtime, would have at least pushed the spread in that game. So it's been a really strong performer. Again, that's no guarantee that just wants to continue, but we looked at several things there. Most of those pushing the Bengals' way.
Yeah, they don't really. Yeah, I'm looking at a lot of these, and you just mentioned them. You have 3, 4, 5. There's 7 trends here you just went over. And what? One of them supports the Rams? This is the teams that won a conference championship game while scoring less than 21 or 3-0 ATS. Again, this goes back to 2002. But all of these support the Bengals, it feels like. That there's a lot of these historical trends go for Cincinnati and not for LA.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Just in general, the Super Bowl has trended towards if you look at just the underdog, the underdogs are 13-7 against the spread in the last 20 Super Bowls. So there's a reason that some of those are interconnected as far as the Bengals not being quite as good of a team coming off that big upset win last week. But yeah, definitely those historical numbers as far as Super Bowl do favor the Bengals, looking at those. And there's a couple other things I've seen backing the Rams this week, but I would say more on the Bengals than Rams for sure, looking at the overall big picture here of those historic trends, particularly as they pertain to the Super Bowl.
Because we last saw, this is when I always go back to this, Vince, about the points mattering in the Super Bowl. The last time the points mattered in a Super Bowl was 43, get the Roman numerals messed up, 43, Pittsburgh, Arizona, when you had the Ben Roethlisberger touchdown of Santonio Holmes in the final minute, that Arizona covered as a 7-point dog, lost by 4. That's the last time we've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 outright underdog winners since then. But every favorite that has won has covered. So basically the points have not mattered in 12 straight Super Bowls.
Yeah, which is an interesting nugget. Obviously, the Falcons won; those points could have mattered, perhaps. So maybe the Falcons won that game outright. But yeah, I mean, you're gonna see. I've looked at this recently, kind of historically, where it doesn't tend to. I hear a lot, and I noted that I've heard this several places where just pick the winners in the playoffs. Because the points don't matter. In reality, looking long term, just playoff, not Super Bowl specifics. Obviously, you mentioned the Super Bowl has tended to shift a little bit that way, but playoffs compared to regular season, the win rates of the cover rates of the team that wins is almost identical for the playoffs and the regular season. So the idea that there's something special about just finding the winner in the postseason, I tend to shy against that, just because when you look historically, those win rates, they're right on usually around the 75% mark. I don't have the exact numbers, but I've looked the last 10 years. I've looked historically past that. Those rates tend to not shift a whole lot between the playoffs and the regular season. So I don't know if there's something specific to the Super Bowl that we have seen that recently, but historically, just pick the winners. If you like that strategy, and there's merits to that and how you can potentially tease or parlay those things, but it hasn't been a big difference between the playoffs and the regular season as far as that goes.
You're going to get into the over-under numbers in just a second, but before we get to that, how are you classifying this game from the standpoint of, are the Rams the home team? Even though technically the Bengals are the home team, I'm saying the Rams playing the game at SoFi Stadium. Are you using your trends to say the Rams, with their home trends, or are you looking at this as a neutral site game? How are you classifying this?
Yeah, so I don't think there's a perfect answer to that. So I think ultimately it will probably go into the system as a neutral site game to align with other Super Bowls. And we had the same thing with last year as well. I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at, and I'm going to mention one here when we talk about the over. I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at the Rams as the home team and the Bengals as the road team. And even you think about the kind of Rams, obviously it's not going to be a full Rams crowd there. That's really the case for all Rams games as well. So I think playing at home, I think technically the Bengals are listed as the home team in this, but I think the Rams are going to carry a slight edge. When we talk about how much home field advantage really matters, but the ideas of comforts playing at home, familiar surroundings, I do think the Rams carry that small edge in that game. It's reasonable to look at the Rams definitely with home trends. If you want to look at road trends for the Bengals as well, I think that's reasonable to do for this game.
All right, well, let's get it going. All right, what do you have for the total trends for this game?
Sure. So we lead into that. I'm going to talk about Rams home trend. I know this was one I've mentioned several times on the show at the end of the regular season and a couple times in the postseason as well. So the Rams, this goes back to just the last 2 years. They are 1-12 over under, so 1 over 12 unders in home games past week 4 of the season. So past the first month of the season, sell into playing at home. The Rams have played lower scoring games than expected at home. And as you mentioned, playing in the home SoFi Stadium here. So that has been active. It was active the final week of the regular season. That has been active in 2 playoff games so far, both the playoff games they hosted, including last week's FC Championship game. They've both gone under fairly comfortably last week, and that Rams-Cardinals won in the first round of the playoffs. It was closer, though not really a high-scoring game at any point. Another Rams team trend to mention here. This one goes back a similar time frame to October 2019. The Rams are 1-12 over under, so 1 over 12 unders as a favorite when they allowed less than 300 total yards last game. So San Francisco got 282 total yards in the NFC Championship game. So the Rams defense, in a spot where they're favored, coming off a game where they had a pretty strong defensive effort as measured by total yards allowed, have shifted them to the under. So just as I did with the against the spread trends, I'm going to throw one over out here before shifting back to a couple unders as we finish. So look at this. Looks at playoff specifics, not Super Bowl specific, but just playoff specific. Teams coming off a playoff win where they scored fewer points than their team total are 35-23 over under historically. So just over 60% mark towards the over when they scored less than their team total last game in the playoffs, but still won the game. So after the Rams, the NFC Championship game, scoring those 20 points, their team total was 24.5 in that game. So one under, still got the victory. Coming off a lower scoring game where they were able to still win, even though they didn't meet their scoring expectation, the numbers historically have shifted towards the over the next game. So now shifting back to the under for the final two. First I'll throw a little nugget in here because this is a little separate. So the Cincinnati's kind of interestingly playing their 4th game this season, coming off an overtime game in the AFC Championship game. They also played 3 overtime games in the regular season, all against NFC teams as they happened against the Vikings early in the year, Green Bay, and San Francisco. The next week, all 3 of their games have gone under. So that could potentially become 0-4 this week if we get another under. So 3 unders this season coming off an overtime game. Obviously, this one's a little bit different because they have that extra week of rest. And you think about some of the factors of playing overtime, but a tight game still. Some of those factors still apply, and the Bengals have gone under in all 3 games coming off the overtime game this season. And so a final note. So teams in the Super Bowl coming off a win by 3 points or less. So this is actually active on both teams coming off those 3-point victories in the AFC and NFC Championship games. Teams in the Super Bowl coming off a win by 1 to 3 points in their championship game. All 6 have gone under the total the past 20 years. I mentioned this is active on both teams. They've gone under by an average of 16.5 points per game. The last that was active actually was it was the Rams in the 2018 season, last time they were in the Super Bowl, obviously coming off the very controversial win over the Saints in the NFC Championship game by 3 points. In that game, a 13-3 loss in the Super Bowl went well under the total by 30-some points here.
Yeah, that one, I find that little nugget interesting about Cincinnati 0-3 to the under off the overtime games. But you mentioned the 3 teams were all NFC teams. And when you look at, they played 4 total games in overtime this year, Vince. 3 of the teams they faced, Green Bay, San Francisco, Kansas City, that they took them down to the finish, and they lost 2 of those. And they ended up winning the other one in the Minnesota game back in week 1, which actually, I think you'd remember this, that the Bengals were in control of a lot of that game. The Vikings came back and tied it, and then Dalvin Cook had a fumble in overtime in Bengals territory. And then Evan McPherson, the legend of Evan McPherson, started in week 1 because he kicked a game-winning field goal there for the Bengals. But, yeah, so you have also, which you didn't mention, the 3 straight Super Bowls that have gone under. Does that have anything to do? Do you take any of that also? I know you have a lot of these trends that really dig deep, but even just on the surface, 3 straight unders in the Super Bowl, you think that turns? You think that's just kind of a, it's just, the matchups?
Yeah, I think in the last 20 Super Bowls, we have, 9 overs and 11 unders. Yeah, I do think there might be a small shift towards lower scoring. Just the pressure of the Super Bowl. There's kind of historically the first half of the first quarter, not a lot of scoring in the Super Bowl as teams settle in. You have the long halftime break and kind of how that affects teams. So I do think there's I don't know about the last 3 games specifically, but I do think there might be some reasons to favor the under a little bit in the Super Bowl just because of some Super Bowl specific factors, how teams play. They kind of settle into the environment that shrinks the scoring time in the game slightly.
Do you have any props that you like? Anything that sticks out to you from that perspective for Sunday?
I'm still digging into the props a little bit, so I'll leave that. It is nice, I will say, for the Super Bowl. I don't get huge into props during the season. It's one of those things where it's 15, 16 games a week, 1 week to analyze. There's only so much we can get into, so I get ATS against the spread. Occasionally have a team total or something like that, but there's not enough time for me to analyze props the way I would like to, so, and there's some great experts out there that do that, many on the site. But for Super Bowl, this occasion where there's a little more time to dig into those. There's a lot more numbers offered, obviously, in one game, 2 weeks to analyze. It gives a little more time to do that. So I'm still finalizing some of that analysis, but I will have some props I'll be interested in coming to the Super Bowl.
Vince Akins, he did a fantastic job this year on the Daily Insider. He joined us every Thursday to break down NFL and college football from a trend perspective. One of the best out there as far as the trends go, and always a lot of good information. And see how it turns out here in the final game of the season, Vince. And again, we appreciate all your work this season. And I guess from your standpoint, go Rams, don't go Bengals because of your Cleveland-Cincinnati rivalry. But we appreciate all your time this season.
Absolutely. It's one of those situations where you kind of got things on both teams. Could be a great reason to place a wager on the game, perhaps, and that'll give the correct rooting interest going to the game, we should say. So, it's been a great season here. I appreciate you having me on, Kevin, and good luck, everyone, this weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl.
Vince Akins, you can find him on Twitter at SB Breakers. Vince, thanks a lot again, and we'll talk to you next. Well, actually, we're not going to wait till next season. We'll talk to you again as we get through NBA. You have a lot of NBA trends as well, so we'll continue on through the season. Give you a little break, but then we'll bring you back on.
Absolutely perfect. Yeah, we'll couple of months from the playoffs here, I'd be happy to join. And specifically when we get into the playoffs, we can really analyze individual games, having a couple of days rest between a few games a night. I think we can really work up some good stuff for the show. All
right. Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Vince.
All right. Take care. Good luck.
All right. You too. Vince Akins, always great work from him. And he also has the NBA, the hoop trends that you see on Vegas Insider as well. He's in charge of that. So once we get closer to the playoffs, we'll have Vince back on, but always enjoy talking to him during the NFL and college season, during football season, NFL and college. He had a lot of great trends every week on Thursdays. He joined us here on the Daily Insider. So wrapped it up there. And a lot of interesting things. The team with the fewer regular season wins since 2002 has done well in the Super Bowl. And I'm telling you, one of those losses was the Falcons, who blew that big lead to the Patriots. So it says something. And normally the quote unquote better team doesn't win. We saw it with the Chiefs last year against the Buccaneers. So we'll see how it turns out coming up on Sunday. Let's get to some NBA in just a second. Before we do, DraftKings. That GOAT, he wanders around and he made his way through Louisiana. He was going to Monroe. He was going to Lafayette. He stopped in New Orleans for a little bit, but he knows everyone's going to find him there. He just wants to kind of go and do his own thing when he's in Louisiana, because DraftKings is legal in Louisiana, and you can score your seats to the Tournament of Champions. You could be that GOAT, wear that crown. Don't take the crown from him. You can get a separate one. But he's the guy there if you want to talk to. DraftKings Championship Series is the ultimate competition of contest winners from daily fantasy sports, sportsbook, and casino. The one and only place you can compete in the king of competitions. The best of the best in each domain will compete for series supremacy in their own domain's Tournament of Champions. They'll have one goal in mind: win the ultimate crown and earn the title of the greatest of all time, the GOAT. That's right. Check it out now at DraftKings.com. All right. Let's get to some NBA for tonight. Again, as long as I haven't missed anything from the trade deadline situation in in the NBA. There's been a couple of trades I saw from Adrian Wojnarowski, the Woj bombs getting dropped. The latest one, before we get to the news of the day, or at least the games of the day. Just want to get the right ones. Okay, so the Kings, Bucks, Clippers, and Pistons were involved in a 4-team trade today. And the big names, Serge Ibaka going to Milwaukee from the Clippers. Marvin Bagley Jr. finally escaped Sacramento. He's going to Detroit. Dante DiVincenzo, who was with the Bucks, he goes to the Kings. Trey Lyles goes to the Kings, and Josh Jackson goes to the Kings. Rodney Hood goes to the Clippers. Goran Dragic is headed to San Antonio. So, really, we don't have any of the big names, which is really James Harden going somewhere outside of Brooklyn. Could be Philadelphia, maybe elsewhere. Who knows? We've been surprised before. So nothing else has happened, at least in the last little while. I think it's 3:00 is the trade deadline for the NBA. So we'll see how that goes. All right, let's go over some NBA for tonight. Let's begin with the Grizzlies and the Pistons in Detroit. Memphis 38-18, Detroit 12-42. So you see why the number is the way it is. But Memphis, they're rolling right now. 4 straight overs. They have won 6 of 7. Only loss coming at Philadelphia in overtime. Detroit has dropped 5 straight, coming off a 30-point loss at Dallas. 3 straight unders for the Pistons. In fact, they've dropped 3 in a row at home to Boston, Minnesota, and New Orleans. And they barely covered in that Celtics game. They should have not covered. But they lost by 9, getting 11. And these teams met a little earlier this season. Memphis beat down Detroit 118-88 at FedEx Forum, laying 13.5 back in January. Now they're laying 11.5. Oh, they're going to play this game tonight, aren't they? The Wizards and the Nets. It's on the schedule. So Washington is 2-14 against the spread their last 16. The Brooklyn Nets are 5-15-1 ATS their last 21 games. Brooklyn has lost 9 in a row. The last time the Nets won a game was at San Antonio, January 21st. That was the last time the Nets won a game. Got blown out by Boston, blown out by Denver, blown out by Utah, lost by 11 at Sacramento, lost by 10 to Phoenix. The last competitive game they played was at Golden State without James Harden back a few Saturdays ago, getting 10.5. So Brooklyn takes on Washington tonight. Bradley Beal's out for the season, elected for wrist surgery. Wizards have dropped 8 of 9. So Washington on a 1-8 straight up streak. Brooklyn 0-9 straight up last 9. And the only win for Washington came at Philadelphia, getting 9.5. Wizards have lost 6 in a row at home. It's amazing that Washington is 2-8 their last 10. There are only 2 wins coming against Philadelphia, of course. Why not? But Brooklyn has defeated Washington twice this season. And Kyrie will play tonight because the game is not in actually, you know what? If I'm not mistaken, don't they have I'm asking you like you would know, but don't they have the mandate in DC? I thought that was why Bradley Beal had to get the vaccination, because he couldn't play in the home games in DC. It was by January 15th or whatever the case was. I thought that that now playing in DC, I'm not sure if Kyrie can even play tonight. So we'll have to keep that one up in the air. I would say stay away from this game. Simple as that. Heat and the Pelicans in New Orleans, and CJ McCollum, he is expected to make his debut for the Pelicans tonight after getting traded from Portland. The Heat right now, still the leaders of the Atlantic. What year am I in? In the Southeast, 35-20. New Orleans at 22-32. The Heat have won 3 straight on this road trip after they lost at Boston and Toronto. They've won at San Antonio, Charlotte, and Washington, all in convincing fashion. New Orleans has won 4 straight. They've covered 5 in a row. They've hit the under now in 6 of the past 7. So that's a good job by the Pelicans, who are coming back to life and still have a shot there to be in the play-in game of the Western Conference. Very curious to see how the Pelicans play now with Ingram, and McCollum and what they will do, at least in this initial game with them. But they'll get it all settled. They're going to be a threat there to make the playoffs, not a threat in the West necessarily. Toronto is at Houston, and the Raptors are on fire, 30-23. They have won 7 straight, and they're coming off 3 straight wins by double digits over Atlanta, Charlotte, and Oklahoma City. They played at Oklahoma City last night, 117-98 win. That was a revenge spot for them. They lost at home to the Thunder earlier this season. Rockets have dropped 3 in a row and 7 of 8, the only win coming against Cleveland back last week. So Houston has not been good. Houston and Toronto have not played each other this season. But Raptors have been good on the back-to-backs this year. But I want to mention this one little note if it means anything. The Raptors on back-to-backs this season are 7-3 straight up, 8-2 against the spread. They've done a lot of that damage on the road. I wrote the number down. I think it's 5-2 against the spread on the road with no rest, but they were never a favorite in any of those games. They were always an underdog. So now we'll see what they do, laying 8.5 here against Houston. Elsewhere in the state of Texas, the Clippers and the Mavericks, playoff rematch from last year. Dallas at 32-23. Jason Kidd, you know what? A lot of people criticize him, criticize the hire by Mark Cuban there in Dallas, but Kidd's done a really good job. I know he's got Luka there, but 32-23. The Mavs have dealt with injuries. Porzingis has been hurt. Tim Hardaway Jr. has been hurt, but that's a really good job by Dallas at 32-23. They're an under machine. Clippers at 27-29, still playing without Kawhi and Paul George. Clippers have dropped their last 2. They lost by 24 to Milwaukee, lost by 26 to Memphis. They really had a lot of problems with Memphis this year, and a lot of teams have, but Clippers, they were just run in all those games by Memphis. Dallas has won 3 straight. All 3 have gone under at home against Philadelphia, Atlanta, and Detroit. They started the homestand losing to Oklahoma City as 12-point favorites, but they stepped up their defense recently, 98, 94, and 86 they've allowed the last 3 games. And the Mavs and Clippers have split the first 2 meetings this season in L.A. So now they're meeting for the first time in Dallas. Remember, the Clippers last year knocked Dallas out of the playoffs in the first round. NBA Finals rematch in Phoenix. It took this long, but the Suns and the Bucks, that really entertaining series they had last year. Phoenix up 2-0 out of the gate. Milwaukee won the next 4. In Milwaukee, they ended up clinching at home after they won the 2 at home. Phoenix won the first 2 at home. Milwaukee won 2 on the road. Milwaukee went to Phoenix for game 5 and won, and then won game 6 at Fiserv Forum, won by 7. Remember that one, laying 4.5? But great job by Milwaukee to come back in that series. They're getting 3.5 tonight at Phoenix. You don't see the Suns, or you'll see the Bucks rather, as a road underdog that often, especially with Giannis in the lineup. But the Bucks so far on this road trip at Portland 137, at the Clippers 137, at the Lakers 131. Phoenix, obviously they'll be motivated for tonight. They're back home after their East Coast trip, lost the opener at Atlanta, won the next 3 against Washington, Chicago, and Philadelphia. And Phoenix has won 9 of 10. The Suns are rolling. They're 44-10 on the season. Milwaukee at 35-21. That's Central, very packed at the top. But the Suns here laying 3.5, 233.5 the total at BetMGM in a big revenge spot. I know it doesn't mean much if you win the this one game because you lost the finals, but still, I'm sure the Suns will be very motivated for this game tonight. The Knicks and the Warriors, they wrap things up in San Francisco. And the Knicks, wasn't for the Nets, we'd be making fun of the Knicks. But thankfully, the Nets have taken the front page headlines in New York. Knicks have lost 4 in a row, 7 of 8. And so far, I mean, look, they blew that Laker game in overtime and then lost by 9 at Utah, lost by 17 at Denver. So they're 0-4 against the spread. Their last 4 overall. They've been terrible on the road. Golden State playing with no rest after they lost to Utah last night, 111-85. Klay Thompson didn't play. Warriors got out to an 11-0 lead in this game. So it just goes to show you how much, how far they fell. They scored 18 in the second, 16 in the third, 20 in the fourth against Utah. And the Jazz have turned things around a bit. Steph was 5 of 13 at 16 points. You didn't even get a great game from Donovan Mitchell last night. He only had 20. He had 14. Bogdanovich had 23. But good job by the Jazz, though. They hit 17 threes in the win, and they had lost to Golden State twice this season. But the Warriors, will see what they do here with no rest, taking on the Knicks. Remember, Golden State beat New York earlier this season. That was when Steph Curry broke the three-point record, broke Ray Allen's record at Madison Square Garden. So I guess you can call it a revenge spot for the Knickerbockers tonight. Let's look at a few college games before we head out of here. Duke and Clemson inside of the ACC, and big spot for Duke after they just lost to Virginia on Monday. And Clemson, they also fell earlier this week to North Carolina at home. So Clemson, who has been a bit of a dud in conference play, they are 2-6 the last 8 games since beating NC State on the road. They've had a rough stretch. They did beat Florida State at home, but lost to North Carolina, lost to Georgia Tech, lost at Syracuse, lost to Boston College at home as 10-point favorites. So it has not been good for Clemson. And the only good sign for Clemson is they hung with Duke the last time they played them. Duke beat them by 2, 71-69. Clemson covered as 11.5-point dogs. But now Duke, a short favorite on the road recently. They beat Carolina by 20, Notre Dame by 14, Louisville by 9. They lost to Florida State in overtime. They beat Wake by 12. So I always liked this, call this trend, a system, whatever you want to call it. I always like when a team is a big favorite at home against someone, they barely beat them. I like taking them the next time as a favorite on the road. And I think that Duke may end up playing better. You know, they'll be motivated after the Virginia loss. And Clemson just hasn't been good. You know, it's tough to back them, even getting 6.5 at home. In the Big Ten tonight, Purdue and Michigan, they meet in Ann Arbor, and the Boilermakers at 21-3, the Wolverines at 12-9. And Purdue, they come in winners of 6 in a row, 9 of 10. The only loss coming to Indiana. They just beat Illinois the other night, laying 5.5. And Purdue just beat Michigan in West Lafayette, 82-76, laying 9.5. So now this goes back to my theory again about you beat someone, don't cover as a big favorite. Now you're laying a short number on the road, and that's the case with Purdue tonight. Michigan just beat Penn State Monday at Happy Valley, but the Wolverines 1-4 against the spread the last 5. I mean, you can't get this fired up about some of these wins Michigan's had. Here's who Michigan has beaten since the beginning of January. Penn State, Nebraska, Northwestern, Indiana was a good one on the road, Maryland. That's not good. The teams they've lost to, Purdue, Michigan State, Illinois, Rutgers, and Rutgers beat Ohio State last night. So on the road, they played some pretty good competition. They've gotten a lot of the worst team they played was Penn State on the road. But at home, Nebraska, Northwestern, Maryland. I mean, let's mix in someone else, right? And in December, and they lost to Minnesota at home. What a weak schedule Michigan has played so far at home in Big Ten play. Sorry, Juwan. Arizona, Washington State to wrap it up in the Pac-12. And Arizona, some good games. You have Stanford, Oregon also in the Pac-12 tonight. You have Arizona State, Washington. Not a great game, but I didn't realize Washington, 7 wins right in the Pac-12. But Washington State at 14-7 overall. Arizona 20-2. Wildcats have won 4 straight since losing at UCLA. Beat UCLA and USC at home. Beat Arizona State twice. And now the Wildcats heading, they got the Washington trip this weekend. Washington State tonight. Washington on Saturday in Seattle. Washington State's won 5 in a row. Now, in that stretch, they beat Cal twice. They beat Utah. Good win at Stanford. And they blew out Colorado. But I'll give Washington State credit. They played well. But now they're getting 6.5 here at home against a really good Arizona team. And last year, Arizona won both meetings. Arizona won in overtime in Pullman and then blew them out in Tucson. But Arizona has won 4 straight, 9 of the last 10 against Washington State. So if that means anything to you, then that's the case there. Want to tell you about this. This is really cool. there's now a new sports book, Sports Illustrated Sportsbook. That's right. It's only legal in Colorado. So our friends listening in Colorado, this is really pointed towards you, or if you live in one of the surrounding states, want to get to Colorado, you can get up to $300 in free bets. Make a bet of $10 or more and receive a $10 free bet up to 30 times. This is for new players only, 21 years or older, and located only in Colorado. And the promo code is ROAD300. And a qualifying bet is $10 or more, minimum odds of 150 or higher. And you could check it out now. Free bet tokens credit after bet is settled and expire after 7 days. So go to Sports Illustrated Sportsbook. The website is sisportsbook.com. Again, legal only in Colorado, but you could check out their odds now and get up to $300 in free bets for new players. My thanks to Vince Akins for joining us today on the show to go over his trends. And Tom Carroll will be with us coming up tomorrow. He joins us every Friday on the Daily Insider. So looking forward to talking to Tom as well. And tomorrow, our guest is actually a former Bengal. He is a one-time Bengal, former quarterback, Jim Ballard. He will join us. He is, listen to this, he's a college football Hall of Famer. He played in D3, but he knows all about Ohio. So we're going to talk about the Bengals with Jim, and that is coming up tomorrow on the Daily Insider. Don't forget to subscribe as well. It'd be greatly appreciated. Subscribe, leave us comments, and again, subscribing part is the big one here on our YouTube channel at Vegas Insider. Not only the Daily Insider, but also our best bet videos, as well as the Great Day Nation, Eli Manning on the latest episode with Morton Anderson. So check that out. Eli, of course, part of the Manning cast. We're not even saying Giants quarterback anymore or brother of Peyton, just part of the Manning cast on ESPN. So check that out with Eli Manning and the interview on the Great Day Nation podcast. You can find it on video form on our YouTube channel. Also, the Great Day Nation podcast you can find on Vegas Insider under our podcast page. So check all of that out. I am Kevin Rogers. We will talk to you again coming up tomorrow. Final show before Super Bowl 56 between the Rams and the Bengals. And we'll finally see who's right and who's wrong with this game. Again, I'm Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for watching. And as always, best of luck with your bets.